So, undefeated British heavyweights Daniel Dubois and Joyce will face off against each other on the 11th of April this year at London's O2 Arena. Now, I find this a fascinating matchup, and it could well be a barnstormer of a fight. And I have to say fair play to both fighters and their management for putting on a fight this big, this early in their careers. I know Joe Joyce is 35 this year, and I guess time's running out for him. But again, fair play to him and his team, and Daniel Dubois and Frank Warren for putting on this fight, because like I said, I think it could be a real barnstormer of a fight. Now, the first time I saw Joe Joyce properly in a full fight was in the World Series of Boxing when he fought Alexander Usyk. And for those who don't know, the World Series of Boxing is this kind of weird hybrid between amateur and professional boxing. If I remember rightly, it's a while since I've seen it. It's 3 5-minute rounds, no headgear, and fighters are allowed not to wear vests and stuff. And there are various teams from various countries and stuff. It's never really grabbed my attention, but I looked at Joyce versus Usyk. Now, when Joyce and Usyk faced off in this bout, Usyk had quite a long amateur career, was coming off a win at the Olympics in 2012, so he was Olympic champion, and Joe Joyce had been boxing less than a couple of years, maybe a couple of years, and I thought Joe put in a fantastic performance. He was widely outpointed by Usyk, but for somebody, like I say, who'd only been boxing a couple of years, I thought Joe put in a fantastic performance. And one thing I did notice about Joe, even back then, he had a fantastic engine. He never lets up. He just keeps coming at you. He just keeps coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. And he doesn't never seem to tire. Now, the second time I had a chance to really study Joe's boxing was in the 2016 Olympics. I watched a lot of boxing for those Olympics, and I followed Joe right the way through his bouts, and he managed to get into the final where he faced off against France's Tony Yoka. Now, if I remember rightly, Joe had had 2 fights already, 2 bouts with Yoka, and won one and lost one. And the way Joe was fighting, I gave him a real chance to beat Yoka in the final. Now, for me, it was a great final. It was nip and tuck the whole way. I edged Joe as a winner, but the judges gave it to Yoka, and Yoka took the gold medal, and Joe ended up with just a silver. But again, one thing that was very, very apparent in that fight, that Joe has incredible stamina, and he just keeps coming and coming and coming. Not for 1 second of that fight did he stop moving, coming forward, pressing the fight, putting pressure onto Yoka. And again, like I said a few times already, Joe's got a fantastic engine. Now, Joe made his professional debut in 2017 and so far has won all 10 fights up to date. Now, he's drawn a lot of criticism in those fights. A lot of people have said he's slow, he's plodding, one-dimensional, comes forward in straight lines, is easy to tag, and I can see all that. But I do believe Joe has the potential to be much better than his performances so far. Now, the one thing I worry about with Joe Joyce is the constant changing of trainer. You know, he's only had 10 fights, and I believe this will be the 4th change he's had in those 10 fights. Now, for me, you've got to stay with someone for a period of time, especially, you know, if you're making that change from amateur into the pro ranks. You've got to have somebody who develops that skill set for the pro ranks. And to keep changing trainer, for me, is not great. I know there are always going to be exceptions to the rule. There always are in boxing. But for me, Adam Booth would have been the ideal guy to stay with for a period of time and really develop that skill set for the pro game. So next, I'm going to have a quick look at Daniel Dubois and his career to date, and then the matchup and keys to victory for both fighters. Now on to Daniel Dubois. Now, Daniel's dad took him to the boxing gym when he was 9 to keep him out of trouble, like a lot of dads do, mine included. And Daniel had a stellar career as a young boxer, especially as a teenager, won all kinds of titles, only had 5 senior amateur bouts and opted to turn professional at the age of 20 in 2017. Now I think his coach Martin Bowers has done a fantastic job in helping Daniel make that transition, that difficult transition from amateur to pro. Of course, Daniel has flaws. What has he fought? 41 rounds. And of course, he's going to have flaws. He's going to have things he needs to work on. He's 21 and he's improving all the time. And I really feel he has the potential to be a world champion. So far, Daniel Dubois has had 14 professional boxing bouts and won all of them, 13 by knockout. And I guess his biggest test to date has been against Nathan Gorman, a fight that a lot of people predicted would be closer than it was. Now, while there are a few flaws in Daniel's game, I thought he got caught with a few shots here and there. He bulldozed through Gorman and got him out of there in 5 rounds. So how's this fight going to play out? Well, one option is that they could come to the centre of the ring and they could just slug it out. Both like applying pressure and they could just have a slugfest. But while that might be entertaining for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or however long it takes, I think it's a bad option for Joe Joyce. For while I both think they have good chins, I think Daniel Dubois is the one who carries more power. And if it's a slugfest and they're both just duking it out in the centre of the ring, I think it ends badly for Joe Joyce. So how does Joe win this fight? What are his keys to victory? Well, first off, I don't think you're ever going to stop Joe Joyce applying pressure. That's the way he fights, and I do believe it's in his DNA. But it has to be educated pressure. That jab has to be on point all night long. It can't be lazy, it can't be sloppy. He has to pop out that jab, and when the opportunities are there, land the 1-2 and step out. He has to stop the Daniel Dubois dictating the range and the distance of the fight. Now the other thing Joe and I hope Ismael Salas are working on his head movement, because he needs to be able to slip that jab. You do not want to let Daniel Dubois land that jab and then tee off on you. He needs to be able to slip inside and outside it and close the distance. At the same time he slips, he needs to close the distance, because he needs to get close to Daniel Dubois, because I think Daniel Dubois is susceptible to hooks. Now if you look at the Gorman fight, you'll see Nathan threw some big winging hooks out. They were thrown from too far out and they weren't short and sharp enough. But I think if Joe can slip the jab, get into distance, I think Joe can really make Daniel take notice, because Joe loves to throw those lovely hooks and short, sharp shots to the body. And once he's done that, I think then he needs to lean on Daniel. He needs to tie him up and control him, because once he's got into range, Joe loves to fire off a number of shots, but I think he needs 1, 2, 3 at the most, tie Daniel up and then reset and start all over again. He cannot let Daniel Dubois get into any sort of rhythm, find his range, find his distance, find his timing, because I think you're heading for disaster then. The other thing is when Joe exits, he cannot exit in a straight line. He needs to step off to the right or to the left. He cannot step off in a straight line, because Daniel will come forward and catch up with you and be firing those monster shots. So that's another thing that Joe has to be conscious of. So how does Daniel Dubois win this fight? Well, I think if it's a slugfest, I think, like I said, I think Daniel wins it hands down. I think he has more power, and I think as tough as Joe is, and I believe Joe Joyce has an incredibly strong chin, I think Daniel Dubois wins it if that scenario happens. Now Daniel has a fantastic jab. You've only got to speak to Kevin Johnson about the power of it. He says it's like being hit in the face with a sledgehammer round after round. And I think if Daniel gets that jab on point, works behind it, I think it's going to be a long night or a short night for Joe Joyce. What I think Daniel needs to do, though, is I think he needs to throw that jab and step over. Throw that jab, step over to the left, and if Joe Joyce is true to form, he's going to be coming forward, and it opens him up for the right hand. I think the other thing Daniel can do is throw out a dummy jab. You know Joe Joyce is going to come forward and step back and create that little, it's like a setting up a minefield. You throw the jab, you step back, Joyce comes in, boom, the right hand. Perfect. So I think those are all good scenarios, but I think if Daniel sticks to his boxing, doesn't hurry his work, and just, like I say, moves to the side or steps back, throws a couple of shots, steps back, throws a jab, steps back. Joe, if he's true to form, is going to come forward and he's going to be opened up to all kinds of heavy shots. The other thing I think Daniel needs to do is relax, take his time in there. I think he needs a tighter defence than was apparent against Nathan Gorman, because he got hit with a few unnecessary shots, left himself open at times. But again, he's a young pro, he's learning. But I do believe that if he just sticks to his boxing, and the last point I'd like to make in closing is that both fighters seem to be able to take a shot really well, and both have exceptional stamina. And I believe if both fighters can make little adjustments and fight to their potential, I think we're in for a fantastic fight. And I'm really looking forward to this. I'm hoping it's a British classic. All right, so enjoy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.